legends from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, the podcast that flaps in the night. I am your host, Winged Scourge Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
I filled up on coconut burgers. I'm Henry Gilbert.
And who is on the line with us?
I'm Matthew J., you knobs.
And today's episode is the Darkwing Duck episode, Life, the Negaverse, and Everything.
I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the cholesterol that clogs your arteries. I am Darkwing Duck.
So yes, we're finally dipping into one of the many Disney afternoon cartoons. It is the main superhero cartoon of this era. We don't count the Mighty Ducks.
No.
We're not going to count that at all. Obviously inspired by the Batman 89 mania. But before we get into the show, I want to ask all of you, what is your Darkwing Duck experience? And I feel like Henry and I are going to have the exact same story. So let's start with Matthew J. on the line.
Matthew J. is Master Duckman.
Yes. He was born in a post-Darkwing world, I think.
No,
Okay.
not quite.
Okay.
I am I have a bit of a reputation for being a duck fan. I have a duck on my hat right now. I'm surrounded by ducks. Darkwing Duck was a big influence. Well, actually, when people think I love the old DuckTales show, I think they just assume it, but I really don't. My first duck experience was Darkwing. I had the toys. I don't remember this, but I've been told that I would put a towel around my neck and run around the neighborhood and tell people I was Darkwing Duck.
That's great.
But this show, I think it holds up better than any Disney afternoon show. I think it's still hilarious and witty and well done, and it deals with superhero stuff in a cool I would say almost Venture Brothers-y or the Tick way, in a way that you don't expect Disney to do. It's wryer than Disney. I think it sets up the Disney that we'd see in Emperor's New Groove. That I think this should get some credit, that stuff that Emperor's New Groove did for bringing it to Disney. But I love the show, and I've got a Darkwing figure right next to me right now, and I have a I'm sure we're going to get into the origins of Darkwing Duck, and I have a very important piece of merchandise to talk about then. So when we talk about,
I know what that is, and I can't wait to hear about it.
I can't wait to say it.
But yeah, I definitely want to talk more about the tone of Darkwing when we get into that. But Henry, where were you when Darkwing Duck entered the world?
I loved it all the same when it premiered, but I was plugged into whatever was going to be on Disney afternoon. So my after school routine was just I get home, I turn on the Fox Kids channel, and I watch the syndicated packages on there, which were Tiny Toons, and then the ever-growing Disney afternoon. I was there for DuckTales, I was there for Chip and Dale, I was there for Goof Troop. But then when Darkwing Duck premiered with its two-parter or three-parter action-y story, and it just felt so different from the other three. Goof Troop got a little funnier. It was a little sillier, but this was the most hilarious in a way that the other ones weren't, while also being high adventure. And then on top of that, Jim Cummings is just the greatest
he's
ever.
Great. Youngstown Zone. I will keep bringing that up. But so I'm guessing you were there on the premiere on September 6th, 1991?
Hell yeah, I was watching it. Wasn't it on TGIF? And then they played a TGIF music video?
I'll get into that later.
Yes.
There's an ABC world, and then there's a syndicated world we'll talk about.
Right.
But yes,
I love that music video. Goof Troop also has a very cool breakdance rap video.
Yeah, actually, I think I'll put the music for that in this episode, but I was there on the premiere because I remember there being literally a countdown on TV every day, 8 more days until Darkwing Duck, and you'd see clips of that music video they made. But apparently, I was not aware of this, and the internet knows very little about this, but apparently it did premiere on the Disney Channel in April. And they ran 13 episodes. I went to so many wikis, and basically every wiki was there is no historical record of this information. Nobody knows which episodes were aired, but there is, I guess, definitive proof that it did air on the Disney Channel before it premiered in syndication in September, and on ABC in September as well.
This was back when Disney was a more premium channel, so I didn't have access to it then as a kid. My family, they could afford it, but they just didn't want to.
You had to pay for that shit.
Yes.
That's why I saw no classic Disney cartoons until like YouTube, basically, because all of that stuff was sequestered. And then when the Disney Channel was free, they didn't show that stuff anymore. So I want to go into some basic historical information, a little of which we've covered so far about Darkwing Duck. So 91 total episodes, a little less than I thought, actually. And it ran in 3 quote-unquote seasons from September 1991 to December of 1992. So let me break this down for you. So one quote-unquote season was your typical 65-episode syndicated order that would run every weekday from like September to December of 1 year, and then in reruns forever. So that was one season.
Just burning them all off.
Yes.
It's so wasteful.
Years and years of work just all gone in 3 months. The second quote-unquote season ran concurrently with the first season on ABC Saturday mornings. And then the third season was another 13 episodes that would air exclusively on Saturday mornings. And after a few years, those ABC seasons were put in the syndicated package for the total 91 episodes. So that was very boring, but that's interesting just to see how much Darkwing they made in 3 years. 91 episodes in 3 years.
Man, when I was a kid, I wouldn't watch the ABC Saturday morning ones because I was very much a Fox Kids channel watcher, so I didn't even know it was on there until like 8 episodes into the run on Disney on the ABC show.
But there was a time in history in 1991 in which you could watch, for 13 weeks, you could watch 6 new episodes of Darkwing Duck per week. And I think I was doing that. I'm pretty sure I was there, and I was there doing that. So as I said before, technically it premiered in March on the Disney Channel, but records from that era are spotty at best, as Nelson would say. So I want to talk about something that I just discovered. It's going to blow your damn minds because it is buried in an internet archived blog post from 2010 from a former Disney TV animation dude. So Darkwing Duck almost didn't happen because the next show on the agenda that included the creator of Darkwing, Tad Stones, he was working on that. It was a reboot of Rocky and Bullwinkle that Disney was going to make for television. Now, have you guys ever heard of this? This is the first time.
No, I had not heard that at all.
Me neither. No way.
So it was going to be called The Secret Adventures of Bullwinkle. Even though people at Disney were sure that they did not have the rights. Like an executive came in and was like, we have the rights to Rocky and Bullwinkle. We're going to do a reboot. And one of the people in the room was like, I was just at Universal Studios and I saw the fucking Bullwinkle show there. Disney doesn't own the rights. So Tad Stones and a few people put together a pitch, and you can see the materials for this pitch online.
Yeah, I'm looking at the art right now. This looks nuts.
Isn't it amazing? And at the last minute, it was like, okay, drop your pencils, everybody. We only have the video distribution rights for Rocky and Bullwinkle. We never own the character. So that one executive fucked everybody, made them spend so much time making a pitch for a show they could never, ever make.
They probably did not get paid for that.
Oh, no,
or at least
no.
got paid very little.
That is classic executive blunder. Oh my God. They misread a thing and then they waste everyone's time designing a show. That is wild though. I wish they'd have made that because in the early 90s, Bullwinkle had a real resurgence. Like I was watching the reruns all the time. I had multiple Bullwinkle videos I just rewatched over and over again that cut the multi-part episodes into like 1 2-hour chunk.
Yeah, isn't there a new Bullwinkle cartoon, new-ish?
It's on Amazon Prime now.
Any thoughts on that? I say just leave Bullwinkle in the past.
I'm sure the people who worked on it worked very hard, but I wasn't pulled into it immediately because it very much has a Flash look to it that is just a turn off.
It has great people involved, but I haven't watched it yet. But the terrible 90s film that I saw in the theater on July 4th is very dear to my heart. The Robert De Niro film.
Oh,
I have never seen that, and I kind of want to see...
Keenan and Kel are in it.
Who's in it?
Keenan and Kel.
Oh, they're both in it?
Students at Wasamatta U.
Oh, God.
Then again, I shouldn't be mean to the animation of Bullwinkle because Bullwinkle always looked horrible. It had great writing and awful animation done for like pesos on the dollar
in Mexico. Before they outsourced the animation, Jay Ward was doing it. He came up with that idea.
One of the one of the drawings for this Disney produced show that never happened. It looks like they had a Freddy Krueger character who had, instead of knives on his glove, he had spatulas.
Oh, I did
And
not see that.
He's terrorizing a man in bed with a stack of hamburgers, but the context is unclear at best.
I will try to put a link to these materials online. It's interesting to see, like, just to even think about what could have been and what, if Darkwing Duck never existed, there'd be this Bullwinkle show we'd have memories of from 1991.
It probably would have been great too.
I'm sure it would have been pretty cool. So, to explain Darkwing Duck, it is an alternate universe spin-off of DuckTales, people. This is a different launchpad. Put down your comments. It's the creator himself has said it's a different launchpad, and it's actually inspired by two different DuckTales episodes. One, Double O Duck, in which Launchpad masquerades as a secret agent and antics ensue. And the other one is called The Masked Mallard, where Scrooge becomes a vigilante superhero. And if you actually look up The Masked Mallard online, his costume looks a lot like Darkwing's, Uncle Scrooge's in that episode. It's very purple. There's a cape. It's obviously inspired by Batman. Batman being, really huge in the late 80s after coming back for 20 years.
Every cartoon did a Batman parody after the 1989 movie. Like, it was, I think there were 17 episodes of Tiny Toons that were based on it,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And there was Batmonk. You guys remember
Batmonk.
that?
Oh, yes, the Chipmunks movie. I got that, yeah.
That's real?
Yeah.
I rented that many times. Yeah, the Chipmunks did a series of direct-to-video film parodies.
That's
including,
why.
Batmonk, Robo-Monk, and Funny, We Shrunk the Adults.
I'm seeing this now. Holy crap! I'm
had
more of
them
a
all.
I'm more of a Bat Thumb man. If you catch my drift, I'm part of the Thumbiverse.
I love Steve Odekirk's work.
Yep, not related to Bob Odenkirk.
He's
by
the
the
third
way.
best Odenkirk after Bob and Bill.
Odekirk.
Oh,
Not Odenkirk. So Tad Stones, this was all his idea, and he was developing the show with Launchpad and Gizmo Duck in mind as the two main characters. But then he was like, this show needs a family to be successful, so he developed Drake Mallard and Gosalyn based on his then 2-year-old daughter. So giving the show a family component was a very important part of Darkwing Duck.
rewatching this, I had forgotten that Drake Mallard, Darkwing, is a dad. Like, he is such a dad character. I completely forgot that was such a major component of the guy.
Yes.
He's also an invented persona by Darkwing Duck. And in the pilot, it seems like Darkwing Duck is just like the Teen Titans show or something. He's just Darkwing Duck, and he lives in a bridge, and he doesn't explain why he's a millionaire. And then when he meets Gosalyn and realizes, like, oh, I need to learn how to be a person, he just says, like, I'm now Drake Mallard, and I wear a sweater vest, and doesn't explain where this person came from.
That's
and no one
right.
cares.
His alter ego is more like the superhero persona that he has to go into occasionally to raise a daughter. But yeah, there's no real origin story for Darkwing. It's all, there's no tragic background. He's just the guy who likes to fight crime because he has a huge ego.
They would give him one late in one of the real later episodes. He goes to a high school reunion.
Okay,
Turns
yes.
out that he and Megavolt went to the same high school together, and
Crazy No Way School, super
Yep.
crazy No Way School.
It's back.
And so Megavolt is going to crash the prom, and then he, puny Drake Mallard, decides he's going to dress up as a superhero and stop him. And so that's how it began. And basically, there's a character in it who's just Flash Thompson from Spider-Man as well.
Oh, wow. The show was going to be called Double O Duck because what a title. An executive liked that title, so they basically developed the show around the idea.
Similarly alliterative.
It really is. It sounds good, but unfortunately, the Broccoli Company, owners of James Bond, the Broccoli family, I guess, or the estate, they said, no, we own the rights to the term double O.
That's
because
bullshit.
Ian Fleming made up the double O signifier. There are no British agents with that double O number in their title or whatever.
So they dump the spy stuff for superheroes instead.
Pretty much, but there are remnants of the Bond stuff in the show in a way. So the show is kind of has a confusing mix of different influences. So on one hand, you have a lot of Bond villains, and occasionally Darkwing works for J. Edgar Hooter, who is sort of his like what, Q or whatever,
Yeah.
or whoever.
M.
There you go. And there's like Steelbeak and the more Bondish villains.
Steelbeak is
Fowl.
the most obvious one, yeah.
Yeah, Fowl is like Spectre or whatever. Is that what? I know nothing about Bond. Spectre is a thing
you're
from
right,
Bond, right?
you're
Okay. And then you have the more Batman stuff like the Fearsome Five and the more elemental villains, the more like superpowery villains. So there's a mix of both Bond and Batman, and Darkwing Duck is also kind of like the Shadow a lot, especially with how he's dressed.
He's definitely the Shadow and his gas related stuff.
Yeah.
Batman he'll use a gas bomb if he needs to for sure, but he's the gas related powers of Darkwing are much more shadowy.
A gas gun, like that is a very specific Shadow. He carried a gas gun that looks like that too.
Really, the Shadow did.
And also,
and he had like the hat and the mask. His look is pretty direct, and like a jacket that's kind of also a cape. That's also very shadowy.
I remember the only thing I know about the Shadow, other than that Orson Welles did him on radio shows I never listened to, is that he was played by Alec Baldwin in a movie where like he is wearing like a girdle that entire film. It's very but
that movie's underrated. I like that movie a lot.
It's a good pinball table too.
Yeah.
No,
so Double O Duck, it didn't like. There's a bunch of designs you can see from it, and like character designs and stuff. And I've actually tweeted a bunch of those at Disney 80s 90s. But the only piece of merchandise they ever released was at a trade show. They gave out pins that say Double O Duck and have the Double O Duck design on it, which has like very different colors, but it's basically the same. And I have one of those pins, and for a long time they were really, really rare. But now they're all over eBay for very cheap prices. So if anybody wants a Double O Duck pin, just go to eBay and search Double O Duck pin, and they're
Nice.
everywhere now.
I'm gonna have one of those soon. I believe the term Darkwing was an internal contest at Disney. Like, we need a new name for this character in the show, and someone won $500. And Tad Stones was like, "I'm the biggest like DC Comics fan, and I couldn't think of Darkwing. You know, just like Nightwing." He was mad at himself.
Yeah.
So this show has a very different tone than any kind of Disney thing to date, really. Upon watching it again and reflecting upon the entire series, this is basically Disney doing a Warner Brothers cartoon. Darkwing is sort of like Daffy Duck. His voice is similar. His attitude is similar. He's a little more mellow. He's not as crazy and greedy, but he's egotistical. He's vain. He's a coward. He's got all of the Daffy traits, but he is his own character too.
I was thinking that Warner thing too in this episode we watched, because like he does a very Warner break the fourth wall, talk to the audience moment too, which
they had to fight for that. Disney wouldn't let them do that because it's a Warner Brothers thing, and I think it was Tad Stones himself. He had to like argue with executives to get them to, and now Disney, that's all over Disney stuff.
That's true. It's like they thought there would be no stakes if the character could break the reality of the show, but that's what makes this show so different than everything that came to date in the Disney TV lineup. It is super slapstick. Like, there's wild takes and characters getting crushed by safes and pianos, and again, like Darkwing Duck will break the fourth wall, talk to the camera at a certain point. The scene will pan out. It'll be him and Launchpad like explaining something on like a projector. Like, they do this so often, but it was like nothing Disney had done to this point. And they were sort of like, will this work? Luckily, while they were working on the show, Tiny Toons premiered in 1990, a year prior, and it proved like, yes, all of this stuff will work. A show can be this weird and experimental and still be successful with children. What didn't happen was Tailspin didn't do any of this shit, and it premiered the same year as Tiny Toons, and in comparison, it looked kind of boring and tame.
That was how I felt too as a kid. I was like, the high adventure stuff wasn't getting me as much when I had the pure irreverence of Tiny Toons.
I kind of feel that, I don't know, maybe Matthew can weigh in on this. I kind of feel that Tailspin did the Carl Bark stuff better than DuckTales did.
I
ultimately.
see what you mean. It's definitely more like swashbuckling and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's Casablanca, it's got it's Casablanca with like high flying swashbuckling adventure. I kind of felt the way as a kid. I watched it, and it hasn't like stuck in my brain as much. But I feel like there's like a nostalgia market for it now. But I think it's kind of riding the wave of DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. It's a good show in its own right. But I think it didn't hit the zeitgeist like other things did at the time.
I think we'll do it soon. It's such an odd show in that it's a mix of Casablanca, The Jungle Book, and Cheers. It's hitting on all the greats.
You know,
and I think it was loosely inspired by a Miyazaki manga.
Right, because Porco Rosso actually came out after it. Some people might think like, oh, this is ripping off Porco Rosso, but not that. But I wouldn't be surprised if internally someone at Disney was importing those mangas just to appreciate the artisticness of it. You know, something comparing Tailspin and also Goof Troop to Darkwing. Another thing I like about it is that like Goof Troop and Tailspin have to have like a cool kid in it, and in this one, like. Goslin is a cool kid who just like is a jerk, and
She's kind of like a Bart Simpson character.
Yeah, I think she's a more
and a girl.
fun, cool
She's
kid.
a girl that got
And
to be a shitty little kid, which I think was rare at the time.
So I want to talk about the creator of the show, Tad Stones. He has a super interesting history. Hopefully, I won't go on too long about this, but. So he joined Disney. He basically was born across the street from Disney, essentially. That's what he says in his bio. Like, I was born across the street from Disney. I was destined to work there. And he's an artist. And he joined Disney in 1974 after an 8-week training program and began work at the company when The Rescuers was in production. And he was part of the quote-unquote middle-aged mob that entered Disney after the 9 old men started retiring and or dying. So now they are the old men. They're all in their 60s and 70s.
Really are.
But that's like... unfortunately, John Lasseter, Ron Clements, John Musker, like all these dudes who entered Disney at this time would go on to shape the company and the Renaissance. But Tad Stones does not get the respect other people do because he was in the TV department.
Didn't those guys invent the cursed Cal art style that ruins all cartoons?
We should throw a brick through all their windows.
I'm kidding.
Have you heard of the middle-aged mob, Matthew?
Never heard that.
I've only come across it in research for this.
I hadn't heard that term, but I was familiar with that wave. You hear a lot about the waves of Disney, and then I guess the next wave after that would have been the in the 80s with like Brad Bird and Tim Burton and Joe Ranft and all those guys.
Right, and so Disney, like the company was in a tailspin after Disney died, but The Jungle Book was a huge surprise hit for them, so they were really staffing up in the period of the late 60s, early 70s, and that's when he joined the company. And basically, once, according to Stones, once Disney hired you were basically an in-betweener for life unless you made your own test in your own free time, like a pencil test, and presented it to one of the 9 old men. Whoever, I don't know if all 9 were there at 1974 or the late 70s, but they were sort of like the hierarchy you had to go past to become a director, to become anything more than in-betweener. You had to present something directly to them you made in your own spare time, and they would let you move on to the next level.
I would think it would be kind of hard to find a way to go up there too, because they weren't producing, like they weren't making in the 70s, weren't making as many shorts, and they didn't have a television division at that point. So it would have just been on the theatrical side to a degree. I would think there's fewer opportunities then.
Yeah, and I believe Tad Stones, I really follow him on Twitter. His art is great. He does Darkwing art all the time on Twitter. It's so good. But apparently his test that he made in his spare time was of Merlin and the woman from Sword in the Stone, Miss Mim, yes. Them doing something. I don't know what the test was, but it apparently blew away one of the 9 old men, and he was able to move on to the story department, and he worked on Fox and the Hound, which is not a good movie, but they tried.
Movie,
that was when Don Bluth was there, too.
That's famously the one they all quit on, or a lot of guys quit on, and there weren't even any credits on it because of that. Am I correct on that?
I was just agreeing. You're absolutely. Yeah, it's like that's the movie. That's pretty much what they were working on when Bluth. I think they just completed it when Bluth ripped everyone away. But Tim Burton, that's the movie that broke him.
And they stole all of his sketchbook ideas.
He's been broken ever since.
he's never fully healed. So what else has Tad Stones done? Well, apparently from after the Fox and the Hound, he worked on Disney rides. So the first one he worked on is the World of Motion, which ran from 82 to 96, sponsored by General Motors. You can watch a ride through of this online. It's essentially a dark ride that shows you the history of progress of human beings moving, first on foot and then on carriage, and then what will happen in the future. But it's animatronics and animation, and Tad Stones apparently was a huge part of this attraction in the writing of it and the creation of it. And then guys, he successfully pitched. So Disney was like, we need pitches. So he sold 2 pitches to Disney in storyboard form, one of which was never made. It was like Mickey in space. Apparently Eisner really liked the idea. And Tad Stones really talks up Eisner all throughout his interviews. So he's one of the few people that doesn't think Eisner's a real bastard.
Wow, that's interesting. I've really fallen into watching video series about the parks, especially Defunct Land. I'm a big fan of that now. And every time he does a Disney thing, even when it's not a Disney thing, I'm like, countdown to him hating on Eisner. Where's the moment?
Well, I mean, Stones points out some things. It's like, I guess Stones' perspective is he brought a perspective from outside of the animation world, which in some ways is good, in some ways is bad. He was talking about how Eisner entered the company when they were working on the black hole, and he was watching dailies or whatever you want to call it, like a scene. He's like, can we get that from a different angle? And everyone laughed at him because he's like, no, we have to redraw everything. This is animations. But he was like, that's the kind of outsider perspective that could help us. So he said he did have
Cauldron.
some... Oh, the Black Cauldron, not the Black Hole, sorry.
Yeah, Black Hole's a live action movie.
They're both...
Eisner, I'm kind of an Eisner defender, but like, yeah, he was a jerk and he was very like money focused, but Disney's like never flourished more creatively than when they were under him, like outside of like when Walt was alive. But like Eisner, like he listened, that is him being an outsider is a good thing. He listened to other people, like especially his kids, which, you know, can be good or bad, but like he listened to his son a lot, and that led to like Splash Mountain and Videopolis and a bunch of other like cool, weird stuff at the parks.
I just, in retrospect, I don't like how he put himself so public facing, and he's just a slimy, like executive looking guy. And he would always be introducing like, "Oh hi, I'm here with my friend Mickey, and we're about to watch Escape from Apple Dumpling Mountain." Isn't that right?
Them talking to Fozzie's mom.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing.
Well, because he wanted to be the new Walt, and Walt hosted the Wonderful World of Disney, so he was going to do the same. But I'm glad that like Bob Iger doesn't do that shit. Like though,
Bob Iger sucks. Also,
oh yeah, yeah.
Anywhere.
Actually, a bit in Lindsay Ellis's recent video, which I say everybody should watch, her review of the Beauty and the Beast live action movie.
It's so good. I watched it yesterday.
She makes great comparisons of Eisner to Iger, and one of her points is like that Iger is more like heartless and easier. He makes fewer mistakes, but he's also just like money, like just sure things. Like,
so there's a great Birthday Boys sketch in which Bob Odenkirk plays a very Michael Eisner-like character doing one of those introductions. And I was like, oh man, no one will get this, but I do. And that's why the Birthday Boys are no longer on TV.
That sketch is incredible. It's where you find out they're all fictional characters.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. I have to go back and watch the Birthday Boys again. But we got off track. So Tad Stones, Eisner wanted pitches, and Tad Stones pitched two things. One was Mickey in Space, I believe. The second one was the inimitable Sport Goofy, which was not a DuckTales pilot. It was being produced at the same time as DuckTales. But that was really like one of the first major TV animation things that Tad Stones worked on. And from there, he went on to work on Gummy Bears because Michael Eisner was like, let's make a show with the name Gummy Bears in it. And you figure out what that is.
Bears.
Yeah.
Do it.
No one has a trademark on Gummy Bears.
Gummy Bears, which is referenced in this Darkwing Duck episode.
Yeah. When Evil Launchpad brings the toys to Goslin, there's the older Gummy Bear plush toy in the bag.
Yeah,
whatever that thing's name is.
So many people worked on Gummy Bears who would go on to. I guess we'll save this for our eventual Gargoyles episode. But I know Greg Weisman was very defensive when people would tell him like, "Well, you guys just made this show because Batman, the animated series." Is like, no. We actually came up with this idea after Gummy Bears because we're like, you know what? What if the Gummy Bears were serious and had their own secret society, but in New York, and they're all different colors, just like the Gummy Bears? I'm like, I do see the Gummy Bears DNA in the Gargoyles.
I can't believe that the people who made the bad Bonkers episodes made Gargoyles. There are bad Bonkers episodes, everybody. Believe me. So after Gummy Bears, he went on to create his first show with Alan Zaslov, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, 65 episodes, and that was all pre-Darkwing Duck. So I think he left Disney in 2003, and I'm sure he's been consulting on stuff since then. He appears at lots of conventions, but definitely follow Tad Stones on Twitter. He does a ton of great Darkwing Duck art, and he's always posting stuff on Twitter. So a few things about the show in general before we get into the episode. So Darkwing Duck, in case you don't know the premise of the show, we talked about it a little. He's a crime fighter. He lives in the town of St. Canard under the alias Drake Mallard. That is the best duck name ever created. I mean, stop there. We're out of duck names. Drake Mallard is the best, period.
It's impressive in a Flintstone way how many bird names they got on the show that were all different, like that they found so much space for it. Drake, and they use up two of the best ones on Drake Mallard.
They use every part of the bird, like Muddlefoot.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a step up from Mick Duck.
Yes.
Yeah, that's McQuack is at least a little better.
Well, McDuck was created during the war. Come on, guys.
We're saying Carl Barks is a phony.
Yeah.
No.
One of the reasons I think the show is great, just like Batman the Animated Series, it's very villain-driven. There are so many villains, some of which only appear once. There's lots of regular ones, though, like Megavolt, Quackerjack, the Liquidator, Bushroot, Steelbeak, Negaduck, Taurus Bulba, Tuskernini, and like a ton of, again, just one-off villains, but lots of creative villains, some obviously based on existing villains from comic books. Tad Stones is a huge Silver Age comic book fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love the tone of it so much as a comic book nerd of just identifying like, oh, that's this villain is this character, but now they're a dog or a duck or something. And also the tone of it I like too is that I think that the Disney Toons crew was getting a little punchy 4 or 5 shows in there. Just like, we can't make the same cartoon over and over again. Like, let's joke around about. I mean, there's an episode of Darkwing Duck where he comes to the real world,
yes,
where they make a Darkwing Duck show, and then he gives them the idea for Chip and Dale within the episode.
He meets Tad Stones in person, looks nothing like the real guy. Yeah, the show got really experimental. Again, they went into this not knowing about Tiny Toons and what it would do and how it would change children's TV. But there's so many pop culture referential episodes of Darkwing Duck. There's an entire Twin Peaks parody, I believe, just called Twin Beaks. That's the obvious pun you go for.
I did not get that as a kid because I was not watching.
Oh yeah,
Twin Peaks.
I want to go back to all of those Twin Peaks parodies I watched as a kid now.
That's the one that starts off with like Bushroot's corpse.
Yes,
right?
yes.
That was a dark start to that one that just confused me as a kid.
They find his dead body. And again, yeah, there's an episode where he goes to the real world. They're really into breaking the reality of the show. And the episode we're talking about today definitely does that. There's alternate worlds and alternate versions of characters. And like, they're not afraid to go too high concept for kids' TV in 1991.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we said it a million times, but I'll say it again. Like, Jim Cummings is one of the greatest voice actors of this generation. This is a tour de force for him. Like, he had played a character, he had been in their cadre of actors since DuckTales, but this is the first time he's had the title role in the show, and he is just so good every moment. And it's an invented, all the other shows, it's either somebody like Alan, Alan Young, who was already playing a character he was cast as, or somebody just redoing a voice that had already been discovered, like Chip and Dale or Baloo. But in the case of Darkwing, he had to invent a new voice for Darkwing to be that guy, and it's just so perfect.
It's a great voice. I really can't describe it. Matthew, how would you describe Darkwing Duck's voice? It's not an impression of something. It's not a takeoff of anything. It's just its own unique thing that I haven't heard Jim Cummings do before or since.
Yeah, because it's like dorky and like silly, but it does sound like a grown man superhero. I think that also is reflected in his design too. I like the way that this show like plays. There's so many different ducks that the way they differentiate them is so nice. Like, I like that Darkwing Duck has like a strong chin.
Yeah,
Like, it's such an interesting thing to put on a duck bill that you would never think of. And I think his voice reflects that because he can talk like this, and he's like, I am the terror that flaps in the night, but he's also like, guzzle it. Like, he goes up so high, but stays in that voice. And it sounds so like when you put that next to like the guard from Shrek, like it's you can tell it's him, but he's so good at stretching. And like, or like Pooh Bear, like he just this weekend he's opening up a major motion picture film from Disney as Winnie the Pooh, and
That's
it's
right.
Like it's a unique voice that I don't think anyone else could sound. Like, now that Darkwing Duck's on DuckTales, if they had recast him, there would have been like riots in the street.
Yeah,
It can't be done.
I've never caught up with DuckTales. Have you seen the Darkwing Duck stuff in DuckTales? Can you describe it? And
I've seen the clip too, but yeah, man, what? It's an interesting take on Darkwing.
It's super. They're kind of, to go back to Batman the Animated Series again. They're kind of like gray ghosting it, where like he's this fictional character that they watch on television, but also really exists, and like they may just be like basing those or like the Marvel Comics in the Marvel Comics world, where like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Chris Claremont exist in that world and make comics based on these real people.
I love this scene. I've only watched the clips from it, not the whole episode, but it's that Launchpad is a big fan of the show Darkwing Duck in that universe, which is just the Darkwing Duck show we watch. So you start with like a minute-long scene of Darkwing fighting Liquidator of Megavolt and Quackerjack, and then it zooms out and Dewey or Louie, the Ben Schwartz one, he's watching it and he's like,
he's Dewey.
Okay, Dewey is saying, "What is this show? Like, did you like this when you were a kid? I don't get it." And then Launchpad's like, "This is the greatest show ever. What are you talking about?"
That's awesome. Other voice actors on the show, I have to point out. So the late Christine Cavanaugh, such a good voice actor, gone before her time. You might know her as like Chucky from Rugrats and Babe from the first movie and Marty Sherman from The Critic. She's doing a great job as Goslin. Probably one of her first big roles in voice acting.
Yeah, Chucky would have been a little after this. I think.
It'd be the same year.
Okay,
yeah.
same year.
So she really blasted onto the scene.
Oh, and Dexter.
Oh, and Dexter from Dexter's
like a year
Lab.
later,
Yeah,
right? Or
It's
2 years
huge.
later. Yeah, that Kristen Cavanaugh. I think I've told this on this podcast before, but she was like the first voice actor to make me really think about voice actors because she was on one of those like behind the scenes shorts they would do during commercials on Nickelodeon for Ah Real Monsters, where she played Oblina, and she says on Nickelodeon, this is when I was first starting to understand like networks and branding and stuff. She says on Nickelodeon, and I'm also Dexter on Cartoon Network. And I was like, what? She can say that?
yeah, and other people like Dan Castellaneta as Megavolt. I really feel like Dan is one of the few outside of Nancy who is a voice actress. Nancy Cartwright, she's a voice actress from like the very beginning. Dan was one of the few Simpsons cast members to really embrace voice acting as like, no, I can make money off of this, and maybe as a way to get leverage on the Simpsons producers, like pay me more. Look at what I'm worth. I'm making Disney money now, and
it's a voice like it's totally unlike any of his Simpsons voices. Like he still managed to find a different one from the 40 other voices he was already doing.
Yeah, I had to double check. I knew it was him, but it's like, is this really him? It's a little crusty. It's not quite crusty, but it's something. It's a voice I haven't heard on. It's
like a
The
nerdy
Simpsons.
crusty.
Yeah, I love it though.
The closest thing to Megavolt's voice I can recall from The Simpsons is, oh my God, the PTA is disbanded.
Oh yeah,
When he screams, he gets a little into the. So also the energy he's putting into Megavolt too is just like he's screaming all the time.
I love Megavolt, his design. Other people, Michael Bell, very famous voice actor. We'll hear him in this episode as Quackerjack.
He's great. I really, in my rankings of rogues for Darkwing, I underrated Quackerjack. He's really great. He should have been his Joker.
I love the design. I also love just like the row of weird teeth. Like Duck should not have teeth. We've all grown used to it having watched cartoons, but he's got just a protruding row of teeth going across his bill.
He's also a very unique voice because he's not doing a voice so much. He's like using more of his natural voice than a lot of these guys, and that always felt so cool to me on these shows back then because that wasn't what voice acting was yet. Now it's what all voice acting is, which I think is a better trend for the industry because it leads to people like it leads to more actors being cast instead of casting one guy for 40 characters.
Instead
in
of
the
just
same
having
show.
Frank Welker do it all.
Yeah, like Steven Universe has pretty much one person play each character because they're using their natural voice. They're being cast for the way that they talk and the way they sound.
Yeah, very much in this era, you were doing a voice when you were performing as a voice actor. Other people I'm looking at right now, we have, I forgot Tim Curry played Taurus Bulba.
Right.
And Dana Hill, the late Dana Hill, she plays Tank in this episode. She'd go on to play Max in Goof Troop. She did a ton of voice acting. I believe she was the daughter in the first National Lampoon movie. Vacation, yeah, she was one
I
of
didn't know
the.
that she was dead.
Yep, she died during Duckman. In fact, they had to replace her. She played
That's right, she's-
Charles or Mambo.
Right. Oh my God. With Christine Cavanaugh, wasn't the?
I don't think so. I don't think it
No.
was Christine
All right,
Cavanaugh.
never
it was
mind.
E.G. Daly who played the other head.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
To wrap up Darkwing pre-show stuff. Sorry, it's gone on a little bit long. There have been comic books that have come out in recent years, and they're pretty good. I own the Duck Knight Rises or the Duck Knight Returns or whatever. It's a great little trade. There is one good video game for the NES.
Great
Yeah.
video game. I think that's the best of the Disney afternoon games of the time.
It really is. It is a Mega Man game. It's basically half of a Mega Man game because they're not going to make a full Mega Man game for you Disney fans, but
You'll pay $50 either way.
yeah,
so.
it's a shorter, tougher Mega Man game, but it is really good. The TG16 game, no thanks. It's
the
pretty.
first run of the comics, which is published in like a big pancake thick, like $30 tome, is absolutely fantastic. I have some issues with the publishing of that tome because it was written by a guy named Ian Brill and co-written by another guy named Aaron Sparrow, and the guy who co-wrote it, I think also was one of the editors or something, and they kind of pushed Ian Brill out, and his name isn't on it anymore, which sucks, but it's absolutely fantastic, and I still recommend everyone. And it's drawn by James Silvani, who is like one of the best working comic artists today.
Yeah, one of my co-workers at an old website I worked at, he was such a huge Darkwing fan that when we went to Comic-Con to cover it, he's like, look, just give me 2 hours. I got to go to that guy's booth, the artist for Darkwing. And he paid him for an original creation, which was a recreation of the scene in The Dark Knight where Batman appears behind the Joker in the interrogation room, except it's Darkwing appearing behind Quackerjack.
That's awesome.
I actually met Tad Stones in 2010 on a whim. I went to the Long Beach Comic-Con, I think, in 2010. He was there. And if you bought a comic with the blank cover, he would draw a sketch in it for you for like, I don't know, $10 or whatever. I have an original Launchpad. I still need to get that framed. I want to cut off the cover and get it framed. My friend who went with me, he thought he asked for Morgana, but he said Magica Dispel. I mean, they're two witch characters, but he didn't get the hotter duck.
Yeah.
Darkwing's almost wife in the third season.
Morgana is a hot, isn't her dad the devil? Right.
I think that was the joke.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing with the show, though, that this episode's kind of a sequel to the Justice Ducks episode, two-parter, which I remember seeing that, and though it aired, or I maybe watched it out of order in my local syndication package, when it aired, half of the guys in it hadn't been introduced. And so I was like, Liquidator? Who's this? I mean, I get it.
I think he actually debuted on the ABC shows.
Oh, that's why I was so confused. Same with like Neptunia, and like half the characters I had not seen before. I also remember being annoyed in the Justice Ducks episode because obviously they were talking about Jell-O, but they can't say, they say like, oh, turn him into pudding. And it's like, no, he got turned into Jell-O, but it's a copywritten term.
Gelatin desserts.
Yes, yeah.
So now that we've covered all the important stuff, let's get into the episode itself.
Darkwing Duck is chilling in town. He don't want criminals hanging around. If there's something you're gonna take my advice. Play it safe.
It's Darkwing Duck, kicking in the groove. It's Darkwing Duck,
The daring Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck. It's Darkwing Duck, kicking in the groove.
He's rough, tough when he's had enough. Darkwing Duck will get dangerous. He has no fear, not a care. So criminals, just be aware. If you break the law, you will not fail to throw.
Hey kids,
Let's get dangerous.
now you could get dangerous
All right.
because Darkwing himself has plucked his favorite adventures just for you. And now they're all yours on video. Collect them all because there's 4 different ones. In Darkly Dawns the Duck, you'll relive how Darkwing, Gosalyn, and Launchpad first got together to fight Taras Bulba. And Justice Ducks Unite pits Darkwing and the greatest team of superheroes ever against the Fearsome Five. Then Darkwing gets his very own comic book as he's forced to take on a giant-sized Megavolt when the daring Duck of Mystery stars in Comic Book Capers. And when Darkwing splits in 2, he meets the most dastardly duck ever in the birth of Negaduck. So get dangerous with all 4 videos of the Darkwing Duck Collection, now available from Walt Disney Home Video.
Good show.
And right now, you'll get 2 different glow-in-the-Darkwing trading cards in each video. Don't miss your chance to collect them all.
This is great.
Hey everybody! When there's trouble, you can call BM. That doesn't sound right. I'm Bob Mackey, by the way, not the other BM.
I'm HW here. HG, whatever.
Whatever your last name is, who cares?
I'm the Launchpad in this break here.
And it's time to get dangerous. And by that, I mean telling you how you can support our shows. So
Yes.
all of our shows are supported by the Talking Simpsons Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, you can sign up at the $5 level. You can get so many exclusives, including access to next week's episode of What a Cartoon, all about the G.I. Joe episodes. There's No Place Like Springfield, Part 1 1 and 2. So you'll get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free, and the same goes for Talking Simpsons. And along with that, there are so many exclusives that will only live on the Patreon at the $5 level, like Talking Critic, and Talking Futurama, and I believe 13 interviews with Simpsons writers and animation legendaries.
Yeah, our most recent one was with Dan McGrath, Man of Mystery. He was a writer on the 4th, 5th, and 6th season of The Simpsons. He was a writer for Mission Hill, for King of the Hill, and Gravity Falls. We talked to him about all that stuff. He's not on Twitter, so he told us a ton of stuff we haven't heard anywhere else. It was really great hearing Dan McGrath on there.
All of our live shows are on the Patreon too. If you haven't had the chance to come to San Francisco and watch us perform live, you can listen and pretend you're there and order an expensive drink while you listen. That's the perfect live show experience, I think.
Get a basket of fries for $14.
Yes, yummy, yummy. What else do we have there? Well, we have season wrap-ups for, I think, every Talking Simpsons season except for the first one. But we actually have the entire first season of Talking Simpsons, if you haven't heard that. It's so long ago. We went through all 13 episodes of the first season.
3 years now.
Yeah, and
Man.
can you believe those are like half an hour long?
I know. It almost makes me want to redo them just because I feel like we'd have different thoughts now on
We
those.
can make them all 90 minutes long now.
The right way.
Yes, the longest way. But yes, there's so much going on there. And if you sign up at the $5 level, as soon as you sign up, you'll get a code from Patreon. You drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and it will download them automatically along with the rest of your regular podcasts. It's so painless, and it's a great way to access so many bonus podcasts, dozens and dozens and dozens of podcasts. If you like our stuff and you're not part of the Patreon, there's so much stuff you're not getting that will always be behind that Patreon paywall. That's how we live, folks. We're sorry it costs $5, but we try to give you as much as we can for that $5.
And you can sign up at the premium level and you get access for $10 a month to see our monthly video where we, for example, will go through all the deleted scenes in Simpsons Season 7, or where we went through all of the shorts in The Simpsons history. Me and Bob really dug into The Simpsons past there for true completeness' sake.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much stuff happening, folks. Make sure you check out patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you can't afford $5 a month, even $1 a month would be great, just as a way of saying thanks for all of the podcasts you guys do. We really appreciate it. But that's all we have to say about our Patreon. We'll let you get back to the Darkwing Duck episode, Life, the Negaverse, and everything. This episode is called Life, the Negaverse, and Everything, and like I said earlier, it premiered on November 18th, 1991 as part of the syndicated package, and we get off with a clip here in which Negaduck, it's a post-heist clip in which Negaduck is yelling at his henchmen.
Another day, another major crime. Well, see ya.
Oh, come on, Negaduck. You never hang out with us after a caper.
Gee, Quacker Jack, why do you think that is? Could it be because I hate you guys? Because you're just a bunch of losers? Because I've got other places to go?
No, that couldn't possibly be it. But liquidate our guesses. It must be something else.
It's because you've got a secret hideout. There you go, Megavolt. That's using the old dry cells.
We don't have a secret hideout. Why can't we go to your secret hideout?
Bushroot, if I let you go to my secret hideout, it wouldn't be a secret hideout anymore. The whole reason I have a secret hideout is to get away from the Geek Squad.
So, in case you didn't know this, Negaduck has 2 origin stories in Darkwing Duck. Tad
I
Stone's...
was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
Oh, yeah, Matthew, can you explain? Because it always confused me as a kid, but Tad Stone says he didn't want continuity in the series.
It's confusing because the original episode where Negaduck shows up, he is created in the episode. So I was going to bring this up because it makes some this episode opens up some weird dark doors that you can take your brain down. Where because originally he was just created. He was like the negative energy taken out of Darkwing Duck.
Yeah, there was a Negaduck and a Posiduck.
So
that
the
were split
Posiduck
from...
was very positive. Negaduck was very mean, and they had to fight. And then it's a very cartoony moral about accepting all the parts of you in Persona 4 and Jungian and all that stuff. And then, but this episode, he comes from the Negaduck universe, or which these Negaduck comes to our world and does horrible things to people that he knows in his world. Imagine if you went to another world and murdered someone who looked like your daughter. Like that just is a weird thing to think of. But then,
pretty
yeah,
screwed
this
up.
episode doesn't mention how he was created that way. It seems like maybe him being created the Negaverse. I don't know. There are probably ways you could make it make sense in your head, but I think Tad Stone's idea is just it's a cartoon. Don't think about it.
I don't think I had been that used to the idea of an alternate universe. Maybe Back to the Future 2 put that in my brain, but the idea was just so fascinating to me as a kid, and it wasn't explored as often in media. So I think that's why this episode really spoke to me and why it's the first one I thought of when I wanted to choose a Darkwing Duck episode.
I love alternate universe things. They're a real staple of comic books. I mean, if I could think of a Silver Age one that Tad Stone could be pulling from here specifically, it would be all the Earth 3 adventures in classic Silver Age DC Comics, which that was the evil universe of the crime syndicate of America instead of the Justice League.
And all those guys.
Yeah, Owlman, Ultraman, Superwoman, all the evil versions of them in a world that they run in a much eviler world of ours, if you can imagine such a thing. And I could see that they work together. The Negaduck persona that was created in that episode doesn't mean that there couldn't also be an opposite Nega universe.
It's
where,
true.
And in that one, somehow the Darkwing equivalent there discovered in a cake a transportation device from his universe to ours.
I like how just bizarrely literal it is, where it's like, yes, of course there's a place where everything is the opposite and bad, implying everything in Darkwing Duck's world is good.
Yeah.
Or most things are, I guess.
I'm glad you picked this one, Bob, too, because this has, if we had picked one that just focuses on one of the villains, we couldn't talk about all of them. But since this has all the Fearsome Five,
This has like every character in it.
and I love how much Negaduck hates them. Like that's how he's so smart. He's like, you guys are all losers. You're all like dopey comedy idiots. I hate you.
They're knobs.
Knobs.
Yeah.
I like how kids cartoony it is that he has to say everyone's name out loud in the first time he's talking to them.
Wow. Yep.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of characters in this show, and we're talking about the great Japanese animation in this episode. Right from the beginning, when they're like getting all the loot off the table, I was watching it like every character is doing something different with a different piece of loot on the table. It's just like, this is Japanese animation in front of me.
Well, I want to talk about that studio.
Oh,
actually.
yes, please do.
It's Walt Disney Animation Japan, or WDA Japan, which, when they were producing, like you said, 65 episodes of a show that would air each year, you need a lot more animators. And so at first, Disney did a lot more outsourcing, which they still did. They did with places like ACOM and TMS, Tokyo Movie Show.
Yeah, they were all over DuckTales.
We can't stop sucking off TMS on this show.
They made my childhood.
But some ex-employees of TMS peeled off and got hired by Walt Disney.
I thought so, because I don't want to paint all anime with the same brush, but when I was watching this, I was like, some of this is so TMS-y. There's got to be some shared talent.
There's like
there.
some finger animation,
Yeah,
like when Negaduck says, that's using the old dry cells, he moves his finger up in a way like, boy, that's so specific.
Yeah.
And so WDA Japan, they worked on pretty much anything below theatrical. Like they worked on tons of the TV shows. They worked on most of the direct-to-video stuff like Return of Jafar and the third Aladdin movie. They worked on the lesser, the Goofy movie, and into 2003. And that is when, in a dark time in Disney history, they decide, what are we doing this 2D animation for? So it gets shut down. And from what I read online, some of the staff there was offered to come to either their Australia studio or their American studios and keep animating there. But the language barrier was just too much for a lot of them, so they didn't go. And they instead went over to just the other Japanese studios, Madhouse, Production IG, those ones. So, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, so the Australian studio has some great TV episodes too, and you can definitely tell. I can't describe it in words without sitting down to think about it, but you can also tell when it's coming from the Australian studio. There's certain like emotions you can read in the characters, certain kinds of acting, and a little more fluidity. Unfortunately, and I knew this happened. Six episodes of Darkwing Duck were animated by Kennedy Cartoons. Everybody,
They're the worst.
boo! They tricked
dance?
Disney. What's that, Matthew?
Does he dance? Does he kick his little feet out?
There's got to be at least one Kennedy Cartoons dance. In case you don't know what we're talking about, Kennedy Cartoons they basically almost ruined Tiny Toons. Like they were one of the first people that signed on to do animation for Tiny Toons. And when it came back to Spielberg, he was like, "What the fuck is this? Shut it down. Get Japan on the phone. We're gonna fix all of this."
There's a great OKKO episode that mocks that, where they said they rewatched the pilot of OKKO, and then they say, "Hey, why?" Actually, Jim Cummings' character says, "Hey, why aren't I in this episode of OKKO?" Like, "Oh, we had sent your scenes to a different studio, and we didn't use them." And then it cuts to a Kennedy Cartoons dance animation.
I'm so glad that, just go on YouTube and look up Kennedy Cartoons. There's got to be like 30 reels of just how bad it got. There's one really good animator on that studio. His name was John McClenahan, I believe, and he went on to form Star Toons, which made a lot of good Tiny Toons and I believe Animaniacs episodes after Kennedy just imploded. But
they made a pup named Scooby Doo. So just think of the way that show looks.
yes, and that was one of their better looking shows.
That's also a funny show. I defend that show.
When that show showed up, it was the only show like it. Like, it was ahead of Tiny Toons doing a lot of the Tiny Toons things. And it feels like the first time they ever got to really be at Hanna-Barbera, like meta commentary, other than, of course, the classic platypus duck sequence from the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, look it up. It's one of Tom Ruger's first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was on that show. So let's get back to Darkwing Duck.
Yeah, sorry.
So we have to point out that Quacker Jack has sort of a weird schizophrenic relationship with Mr. Banana Brain, his banana puppet. And Mr. Banana Brain gives him the idea, if we follow Negaduck, his secret hideout won't be so secret anymore. And so that's what happens there. And then we go back to the very suburban life of Drake Mallard. It's very much like a Homer Simpson in Flanders scenario in which Drake does not want to go to Honker's birthday party. Honker is the little Millhouse kid of the Muddlefoots, the next door neighbors, who are very like 60s suburbanites. Their dad like wears Hawaiian shirts all the time and is a Tupperware salesman. They call it Quackerware in the series.
You know, with this show and Goof Troop, I think the animators at Disney had a lot of neighbors they hated.
It was an easy go-to for like domestic comedy, I think.
I think that does directly come from The Simpsons. I think that's them, because I say that in my video about a Goofy movie and Goof Troop, that I think these shows are very influenced by, like, let's get a wider audience, and they're looking at the cartoons that adults were watching at the time too.
Yeah, I can see a little bit of that in Darkwing. Definitely, Goof Troop is Disney's Simpsons. They're definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking Max has a spiky hairy skateboards. He says cowabunga, all that shit.
Wears a red shirt.
Yes.
Drake Mallard here yelling at Goslin too, just like, "I'm not going. I hate the Muddlefoots." Again, Jim Cummings in this episode is playing basically three versions of the same guy, like Darkwing, Drake, and Negaduck are all basically the same dude, but have different flavors of the same voice.
That is true.
He has so much range within those three, giving the majority of the dialogue in this episode. It's a real tour de force.
I forgot Drake has a slightly different delivery than Darkwing does most of the time.
He's a little bit higher and calmer. I also like that it's a Disney show where a character openly yells that they hate someone. I think that was probably revolutionary then.
Later on, again, I should not be surprised by all the stuff I grew up watching and what they could get away with. But at a certain point, Darkwing is tied up. He's just like, "Just kill me, just kill me." Which I don't even know if you could do that now on a kid's show. Just
There's
a character
few things
shouting,
in
"Kill
this.
me."
Yeah, there's a few things in this. I'm like, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that one.
So we cut to Launchpad picking up the peanut butter, honey, and sauerkraut cake, and it's an easy joke.
What an idiot.
Yes.
That guy, though, I have to say, Negaduck, he looks down on the Fearsome Five because they're all knobs, but he's too stupid to see, like, Launchpad is right in front of
That's
you,
true.
Negaduck.
He's too into going back to the Negaverse. He's a one-track guy. So he goes into the private room, and Launchpad sees him, and he runs back to tell Darkwing, or Drake rather, about what's happening. at the unnamed German cake shop. So there is we're back at the party. It is a Pelican's Island themed birthday party, and I love how into it Herb is. He's wearing the skipper's outfit, and he puts Gilligan's outfit on Drake. He just slaps it on him.
Very rude.
Yes, I think just so he could hit him with things later. But so this is what happens after Drake is put in the Gilligan outfit.
Welcome to Pelican's Island. It's kind of a theme dealing. Ooh, I hate the Muddlefoots. Oh! I wonder what is cooking under this primitive barbecue. Look! Coconut burgers! Wow, Herb, this is really great. I've got to get out of here. Drake, I just... The bakery!
Oh, what a lovely cake!
Fearsome! Why, a cake has washed ashore! Come on, little buddies, let's eat! Launchpad, what are you babbling about? The Fearsome Five is at the bakery!
I love Launchpad so much, by the way.
He's a lot of fun. I also like that Drake doesn't give a shit about him. He's just like, die of exhaustion. He's like, no, too subtle.
And Herb is putting on this whole show for the benefit of no one. Honker's like in the corner reading books, but I like how into it. It's like, what's happening on this primitive grill? A cake has washed ashore.
He spent a lot of money and invested a lot of time in it. And I love his wife is just very, oh dear, supportive.
Yeah, a very like Midwestern housewife.
Yes.
They know their son's a little wiener who has no friends, so they have to really entertain him.
Well, it's also funny with Honker that he's like Milhouse if his brother was Nelson. So
That's
he's
true.
never free.
Yeah. That's true. Tank, the older brother is very much Nelson. Although I don't think he ever bullies Gosselin in the show. He's mainly just like a threat to Honker, I believe.
Yeah, I think they just tangle when she needs to defend her dorky best friend.
That's true. So in order to get out of the party and into the cake shop, Drake hides in the bushes and trips Tank. He flies into the cake, and that's an excuse to go to the cake shop.
Well, so when they arrive at the cake shop, I like Negaduck's anger at them, like, you idiots followed me, and they're like, they didn't think it through. And then Darkwing appears and he's like, get him. That's when he realizes, oh shit, I didn't think about this either.
There are 4 villains. I didn't capture a lot of the show. A lot of it is very visual, and including this scene in which Darkwing is thrown into the portal, and he ends up in the evil version of St. Canard. And he walks around looking around and see if, like, what has happened here? What's going on? And he enters his house.
Yay, you're home! I dirtied the kitchen just like you wanted.
Like I wanted. What are you up to?
Yeah, I found another bag of toys, and someone planted a stinking rose bush.
Launchpad?
Is there something wrong?
You don't look like our usual Mr. Grumpy Puss.
Newsflash! Darkwing Duck is loose in St. Canard. Mighty Negaduck demands that Darkwing Duck be arrested on sight.
No, make that shot. Darkwing Duck should be shot on sight. Or skinned. Yeah, skin him alive. What's Negaduck doing on TV? Even better, burn him to fiery ash. And then arrest him. And it's easy to recognize Darkwing Duck. He looks just like me.
So Negaduck is sort of the ruler of this cursed world. I believe he's called Lord Negaduck by many characters.
Yeah. They respect him. He this is also when we get a lot more of the like Warner cartooniness of it too. Like that, it's one thing that kind of hurts the stakes just a little bit for me if you view it as a straight superhero show. That's like, well, if Darkwing can fall 8 stories and then just wonk his head and be
Land
like,
on his
oh
head,
boy,
yeah.
then it's like, well, then he's not going to be that hurt by getting splatted by a giant hammer later in this, right? It seems he can survive it.
I like that when Negaduck enters the world, he also lands on his head. There's no safe way to enter the Negaverse,
He
it
just
seems
does
like.
that every time.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that no matter what universe you're in, Gosselin is on Darkwing's side.
Yeah, that's true. She's super. Even though Negaduck probably treats her quite horribly, she's just like, "Hello."
Yeah, they don't really explore it because this is a kids' cartoon, but the unspoken thing is that Negaduck is just an abusive father.
Yeah.
Well, I mean on like her representation of Darkwing's side. I mean, like when Darkwing is like, let's team up, she goes right. Like Launchpad doesn't join him, but she does.
Yeah.
Like she's always going to be drawn to Drake Mallard himself. I think that's it's almost like a BioShock Infinite kind of thing.
They have a very sweet relationship with each other.
And I wonder if Negaduck, is he ever out of costume in that world, or did he not invent a Drake Mallard?
Yeah, I wonder if he
persona?
has like an alter ego. But I do really like what I call Dirtbag Launchpad in this scene. I want an action figure of all of the alternate universe characters, including the biker Muddlefoots.
Yes.
They're all in their biker gear.
I like how the satisfaction with which Launchpad destroys those roses. Like, he already tore him out of the ground. He's like, nope, got to hit him with an axe too. I'm this mad at these rose bushes.
I think this is like just the way that biker gear looks, but I definitely think that the alternate universe honker is like a little Nazi-ish. It might just be like the way biker hats look, but that looks like a Nazi general hat or something.
The honker is like a little Hitler in this scene.
Yeah.
It's weird, yeah, but also kind of Tom and Finlandy too. It's a fine line with biker gear. If like, well, how tough, gay, or white supremacist is this? Like,
Honker's like wrapped in chains too.
So Honker, oh my gosh, the reveal. Well, first, where they go next door and run into Good Tank. But
Yeah.
wait, first I wanted to say sorry.
Go for it.
I wanted to praise that threat by Negaduck, where he's just like, skin him alive. When he said skin him alive, I was like, can you say that on a Disney cartoon?
He was like, shoot him. Just shoot Darkwing Duck in the head.
Arrest him.
Yeah. So up next, Darkwing and Goslin, they flee Launchpad, who has a rocket launcher, by the way, out of nowhere, and they go to the Muddlefoot's house next door. And Tank, who is a very polite non-bully in this universe, explains what's happening via a very Back to the Future-ish scene.
This is your world. This is our world. You, Darkwing Duck, have traveled through the doorway that separates your world from ours and entered the Negaverse. Here, everything is the opposite of your universe, and Negaduck rules supreme.
Oh, I get it. I fell into a big birthday cake, and now I'm in another universe.
That's right.
I don't think so.
I really like the verse.
Yeah. He knows
it's a good
to be
zoom
dramatic.
too. Yeah.
And his helpful, like almost kind of Monty Python style, like pulling down the drapes thing.
They're ready.
Great.
He's ready to explain this to anyone who comes in from the other world.
And I also love that when the Muddlefoots show up, they're acting the same. Tank is acting different, but they're both played with the same voice and inflection and everything. The parents,
But with great biker gear on, and they think he's Negaduck because he looks just like him. And I like how I forget what the wife's name is, but she's praising his new outfit. It looks so gloomy.
Yes, yeah. And then when you see like Honker's party with like they have severed shrunken heads in there.
And they put in a scream effect in the Foley when they cut to the painting of severed heads.
Yes, yeah. It's a lot. And I have to say, Honker follows Negaduck's instructions correctly. They're like, we're gonna burn him to death and then arrest him.
That's one of the best animated scenes in this show. If only you could see it, guys. When Honker is just like bouncing up and down, it's like it's Darkwing Duck. He's just bouncing and pumping his fist. It's so well animated of just Honker like circling the group of people and pointing out it's Darkwing. It's so great.
And then throwing him on the barbecue instead of those coconut burgers.
It's true. And we don't really see what happens, which is kind of a cheat, but Darkwing Duck is put on strapped to a giant spatula and put on a grill, and then he's electrocuted, and then there's just a fade. Like, what happened there?
I thought that was an act break, and then it wasn't, because the act break comes like 30 seconds later.
Yeah, it's so odd. I don't know why that they leave that to your imagination, but I wonder how they got Darkwing Duck out of there. And I guess the evil Muddlefoots are dead now.
No, they'll show up later. I
Oh,
guess they
you're
got beat
right.
up,
That's right. They were not killed by Megavolts.
Well, actually, the Friendly Four would do a terrible job at beating them. They probably just ran and cowered in fear from them. I really love speaking of great animation, I love when Darkwing wakes up and he has like his tattered hat, and it's like flopping with him as he talks. Like it's really great acting.
Like the floppy hat, scarves, and cape adds a lot of like character to how he moves. I really like that choice in his design. But it's telling that Darkwing is not tied to the chair; he's just sitting in the chair, and that's when he meets the Friendly Four.
We got Darkwing Duck! We got Darkwing Duck!
What's going on? Where am I? You guys are gonna be sorry you messed with the mighty mallard.
Okay, we're sorry we messed with the mighty mallard. Just put the gun down.
Yeah. Most would rather surrender than fight Darkwing Duck.
Get him!
Hey, no fair! You're messing with the mighty mallard.
You sure this is the right guy?
When I get through with you, you're gonna wish Negaduck was duck enough to do his own dirty deeds.
No. We're not working for Negaduck. We're against Negaduck.
We didn't kidnap you. We rescued you.
We're the Friendly Four.
So yes, the Fearsome Four are now the Friendly Four. You think Darkwing would put those all together after seeing, evil Launchpad, good Goslin, good Tank, evil Muddlefoots.
He's pretty slow on the uptake in this.
Yeah.
I wish that they had other designs, but I guess for the reveal, maybe that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I felt the same way. But also budget-wise, they already have like 5 new character designs in this for just the alternate versions of Launchpad, the Muddlefoots, and Goslin. So to fully redesign 4 more of the villains, and they do get a redesign later in the episode.
That is true. Yeah, they're all Darkwings at the end of the episode. I forgot. And I love Dan's readings as Megavolts. They're so great.
Okay.
Yeah. As he's trying to reason with this mad duck who's pointing a gun at them. Put the gun down.
And
it's
also,
funny to hear him take that super over-the-top voice and have to bring it down while keeping it's still that voice, but he's like, oh, all right, we're all cool here.
Yeah.
Let's say we're all good. Let's all just calm down. And I love Darkwing's reaction of disappointment too, just saying like, no fair, you're messing with the mighty mallard.
Yes, so Darkwing bashes his head against the steel door. He finds out it's not a dream and he's about to leave, but Nega Goslin tugs on his heartstrings.
Okay, it's not a dream. This is the Negaverse. Doesn't mean I have to stick around though.
No, don't go!
You're the only one who's ever beat Negaduck.
Look, thanks, but no thanks. I've got to return to my own universe, my own city, my own life, my own Goslin.
She's probably worried about you. You shouldn't keep her waiting.
Whose kid is this?
Goslin's guardian is Negaduck.
No. In the Negaverse, there's never been a Darkwing Duck to guard the city. Or a Drake Mallard to be a father.
Oh.
For you, Goslin, I'll stay.
So again, his connection with Goslin does not fade even in another world with another Goslin, and that's what eventually changes his mind.
That is such a sweet moment. I like that he can even this very silly show full of, with a main character who is famously egotistical and a coward, that he can still like melt and be like, all right, you're right, I should do the right thing. And though I also like that he's a bit like Negaduck with the Friendly Four too, where he's just like, no, I don't want to hang out with you guys. You suck. I'm out of here.
You're all losers.
Same deal.
Yeah.
And I had to laugh. I laughed hearing it again, but just I forgot they give him the the Looney Tunes sound effect of talking to the force wall, like.
And the big cartoony gulp too that we hear.
Another thing about Goslin that I didn't think about till just now, thinking about her relationship to Darkwing, that was unique for her at the time. She's an animated character who was adopted, which was not common.
That is true. Yeah, I guess, no Disney family can have more than one parent, but the way he finds her in the pilot is very different than what we usually see.
They're usually nephews if they are in that thing too. They're not an adopted child. Which that's pretty sweet too. That the pilot is so great. Like that's also some amazing animation in that one too. One of my favorite animations in it is when he's pressing the colored buttons to the song and he has like a real like wrist flick to each button press.
So he decides to whip the friendly four into shape. We get some nice montage scene, of course, because that's what happens when you whip something into shape. Liquidator is hitting a punching bag. Megavolt is using a calculator because they have to be smarter. Bushroot blows himself up with test tubes, and Quackerjack develops a really nasty toy clown. I guess even when he's the part of the friendly four, he's still kind of evil because the clown has like a giant axe that pops out of its chest and chops.
It's just what he knows how to make things. Like,
yes, he can only make evil toys.
it's very horrifying. And then I also like at the end of it, even though he's decided to help them, Darkwing can't not talk himself up. He's just like, but what they don't know is you have Darkwing Duck. It's like you're right there. You don't have to introduce yourself again.
They get it, but they cannot withstand the power of bazookas. And Negaduck and all of the other characters we've seen, Launchpad and the Muddlefoot, show up with bazookas. And Negaduck says, "Take them to the tower." And we open on the tower.
The old hometown ain't what it used to be, hey, Darkwing?
Oh, a veritable magic kingdom of fun for the whole family.
You don't know the half of it. The Negaverse is my own personal playground. And with a little help from my Nega Hammer, you're going to be my own personal pancake.
I am sick of hearing your gums flap, Jack. Just kill me and get it over with.
All in due time. When the pendulum cuts through the rope, it's bye-bye, Darkwing. And don't expect any help from those losers. They couldn't crack an egg, let alone crack this glass. So long. I'm off to create more unnecessary pain and suffering. Losers.
He's so petty.
Yes.
He hates both versions of the four villains so much.
Yeah, but they're his only henchmen. So.
Yes, and all they have on their side is the toy clown, and Darkwing says, "Use the clown," and it does a new thing. It's so creepy. It sprouts like spider legs, but and they all have axes in their hands, and it's like walking with the axes, and it almost chops Drake in the crotch.
That is some scary anime, creepy stuff there for
like
sure.
A spider clown with 6 axes coming
horrifying.
at you. But it does sort of like hack at Darkwing all over his body, but he does escape just in time before the pendulum comes down and crushes him with the hammer. So he makes it out alive. And when he escapes, the friendly four use all of their powers, except Quackerjack, to fix the town.
Quackerjack already did his bit.
That's true. That's true. He did what he had to do. So Megavolt, he brings power back to the town. Liquidator cleans all the water, and Bushroot makes all the plants grow. So the Negaverse is starting to look a little better. And Negaduck is so pissed off by this, he's going to fuck up the Posiverse or the Neutral Verse or whatever the hell Darkwing Duck's world is called. And we have a clip of that too.
We are the terrors that flop in the night. We are the soap that's cleaning up this town. We are Darkwing Ducks.
King Gear.
Friendly four, Darkwing's Ducks, different name, same old losers. Herb, grill 'em.
All right, team. Let's prove we're not losers anymore.
It's party time!
All right, team. I think you surprised him with that.
So again, very visual, but I wanted to put one little fight scene in this episode. But what we missed is Negaduck is heading back to the cake shop to go to the Neutral Verse to mess it up.
Yeah,
and the villains are there, and they're all dressed as Darkwing Duck, and I love those designs. I want action figures of those too.
Of Darkwing's Ducks.
Yeah, of all the villains in Darkwing Duck's outfit.
I like the name better than Justice Ducks too. I mean, we all know it's a parody of Justice League, but I prefer Darkwing's Ducks.
Yes.
Justice Ducks.
They couldn't decide on what to pluralize. So if you couldn't tell based on all the sound effects, Herb attacks with great spatula nunchucks. I like that touch.
But no one can directly hit anyone in a kid's tune this time. That's why, actually, in the Tick episode, we're doing this very similar thing of like, okay, somebody lands on both your feet, and then you shove your feet forward, and then the person spins around.
It's a lot of pushing. But yeah, so Liquidator makes a puddle that Herb slips on, and then Quackerjack kicks him and knocks him into Darkwing. So I guess you're allowed to kick, maybe? Kicks are okay.
It's more of a tumble.
Yeah.
It's weird. The rules are very all over the place. Now we talked a little bit about that on the Spider-Man episode too.
And the Batman one as well.
Yeah, but I also really like how Darkwing says, "Hey, you got him by surprise," and then he gets surprised by Negaduck.
That is good.
Walt Disney Japan, they are really good at action.
Yeah, this action is so cool. Megavolt and Bushroot take care of Honker in the way you would expect.
I couldn't believe that
he was electrocuted?
When Honker came up, I was like, are they gonna hurt Honker? I was like, and then he's electrocuted. I was like, whoa.
He's electrocuted on screen for like 15 seconds.
It's honestly too long.
Yeah. And then Bushroot summons a Daisy to pick up Honker and sort of just throw him out the window.
Mhm.
I don't know. They don't attack the wife, thankfully. She stays out of it. Yeah.
Children you can electrocute. The wife, no.
Male children.
Male children only.
I like how she tells Honker to do some life-altering damage too. Like that is a very real specific.
Darkwing is going to leave the Negaverse after having defeated the Muddlefoots, but it's time to say goodbye to Nega Goslin.
You guys did it! But it would appear that Negaduck has escaped into the portal.
I've got to go get him, Darkwing. Besides, your Goslin needs you.
What about you?
Don't worry about me. I've got 4 Darkwings to take care of me now.
Goodbye, Goss.
Hurry!
That's so sweet.
I do want to see the series in which the 4 villains are raising Goslin.
My 4 dads.
In the Negaverse?
Yes.
A family can be 4 villains.
Yeah, that's a family.
Don't even need to say it.
We cannot. I beat you to it on the lag there, man.
Is this 2 Birthday Boys references in one episode of What a
Yes.
Cartoon? We apologize.
I really like the journey that all of the fearsome 4 or the friendly 4 go through in this too, because they're told they're losers and suck the entire time in both universes, and then at the end, Megavolt has that great line of like, you know what? We're not losers, and we're going to show you. I really like that moment.
And then they all become dads.
Yes,
The best heroes. Earth's truest heroes.
And that Megavolt won't take his helmet off, so his prongs just stick out through the top of the hat.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So many nice little touches. So the rest of this episode is very, very visual. It's Darkwing chasing Negaduck through this portal. And again, Disney of Japan, this is great effects animation I really associate with anime. Just all of the swirling stuff going on behind them, all of the great colors moving around them. Very expensive looking, very, very convincing in terms of effects animation.
Yeah, and that I like that Negaduck is defeated by an idiot again. It's like Darkwing accidentally pulls the cork that could undo the universe is introduced so late. They're just like, no, pull on that. It'll undo the universe. Did it.
The universal plug. And
Yeah.
there's a great scene. If you can watch this, and I recommend you do watch this episode, like Negaduck clawing his way out of this, like, I don't know, oblivion hole he's being sucked into, and all these colors are rushing past him. It's so gorgeous looking. And I have to like think, was Negaduck like consumed by reality? This can't be a good fate for Negaduck to be sucked into the universal hole.
He will show up in a later episode with no explanation
It's
of how he
true.
survives this, but they kind of need to kill off Negaduck here just because he's done so much evil that he can't be free. They can't be like, well, then he just went back to the Negaverse and fucked it up once Darkwing was gone. Like, they can't do that.
Yeah.
So he needs more of the Disney villain death that is also in no way the direct fault of
That's
the
true.
hero.
But like literally a giant plug in a portal that Darkwing pulls is so Warner Brothers-y.
Yes.
Especially using it as an anchor to pull himself towards the door. And he's like climbing through the door as the door is being pulled into the like oblivion black hole.
So cool.
It's so cool looking. So our final clip, Drake is back in the real world, and it ends in the way you would think it would end.
I'm back, and I got the birthday cake too. Boy, is it good to see you again.
Cut the sap, Dad. Hand over the cake.
Drake Meister! We saved a couple of juicy coconut burgers for you, Spud.
I love the Muddlefoots.
The
Aw.
end, yeah. So he's back to normal. Everything is better in comparison, which is the important story.
I forgot
Important
he
moral
called
of
him
the story.
Spud.
Yes.
That's a good nickname there.
It's a good. He's a very tacky man. It's a good nickname to come out of a tacky man.
He's a dad.
Yeah.
He's a real dad. There are a couple, we give all this credit to the animation. There are a couple goof 'em ups in this where they accidentally color Darkwing with Negaduck colors, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's to be expected in a pre-digital color age.
I'm surprised there wasn't more miscommunication. So yeah, when Darkwing climbs out of the cake into the real world at the end, in the scene of him climbing out of the cake, he is Negaduck, and you're like, wait, what? And then it cuts to further away, and he's Darkwing, and you're
For
like,
like
oh
a
yeah.
tenth of a second,
Yeah.
but it's in. I believe when the Fearsome Four jump on Negaduck. No, when the Fearsome Four jump on Darkwing, he's Negaduck colored as well.
Oh, okay,
So-
yeah, but there's so many characters, so many colors, so much movement for TV budget, especially of this era. Man, they really overperformed in most cases. So yes, this was Darkwing Duck. Everybody, we talked a lot about Darkwing Duck. I want to know if you have any final thoughts on this episode and the series and its legacy. Matthew, how about you? What do you feel about Darkwing Duck and this episode?
You picked a really good episode to go over because I think
thank you.
just the idea of Negaduck is so great, and I think it's the reason you still see him so much. I mean, also because it's easy to reprint a Darkwing Duck toy with just different colors. But he's really become like the other character that people talk about a lot in Darkwing Duck's, part of the '90s nostalgia resurgence. But this show, unlike a lot of the shows in the 90s nostalgia wave, really holds up and is very funny and looks amazing. I put it up there with like Freakazoid and those shows that are just still very funny and weird. And I think a kid show couldn't be written like this anymore. I think it feels like totally a relic of its time in a very good way. And I think those DVDs are probably out of print. They're probably really cheap, like most DVDs. But I watched this on Daily Motion, so people could
Me too.
also do
Yeah.
that. It's still accessible. Watch it all. I love it. I stand by. I still think it's the best Disney afternoon show.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this the tone is great. The all the characters are so good. Like in Darkwing, Launchpad, like they're all Goslin. Just them as a trio are such a great core to the show, and there's so much room for great villains and a villain of the week show. They can just build this. Also, I love that they can do episodes like this that pay off dozens of episodes before it of seeing all these villains together. Like if you've never seen the Liquidator before, you might be confused. Like, why is he doing all these TV commercial references? But it really pays off having watched more of it. I think later Disney afternoon ones, they got this is the right balance of meta because they got too much more meta or they just were a movie. They're just like, let's just do more of one of our popular movies instead of, after the failure of Bonkers, like, you know what? Let's just have Timon and Pumbaa the show. Let's have Aladdin the show.
I think this is my favorite original Disney afternoon thing. I mean, I watched all of the stuff like Gummy Bears, and we didn't really talk about the stuff that came before, like Fluppy Dogs, Popples, Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Tailspin, Chip and Dale, like all that stuff. It's good, especially DuckTales and Tailspin. I feel like this is like a whole new level, and they were taking so many different chances that if you go back to Rescue Rangers, it's a great animated show, fun adventures, but it's not nearly as ambitious or as smart as Darkwing Duck, and there's not as many good villains either. And again, the patterning a show after Batman is a great idea because you can have so many great villains, and I think the show sort of got me ready to be into Batman the next year for the animated series because I saw 89 Batman, I was like, okay, I'm cool with Batman. And then when the animated series came out, I was like, I really like Batman. So I think Darkwing Duck helped me get into the world of Batman-specific superheroes. So thank you very much, Darkwing Duck. So Matthew, you're our special guest. You've got a lot going on, and you're in La La Land right now. Can you tell the folks where we can find you, how we can help you, and what you're working on?
I am. There's no shortage of places to hear me talk about old cartoons right now. I have my YouTube channel, Cartoons 101, which is supported by Patreon at patreon.com/cartoons101, where you get a whole bonus podcast. We just went through all of Neon Genesis Evangelion episode by episode with awesome guests like you guys and Kat Bailey and a bunch of amazing people from the internet. And now I'm doing Satoshi Conversations, going through all the works of Satoshi Kon. And I've also interviewed Bill Oakley from The Simpsons and Scott Gardner, creator of Moonbeam City and host of podcast The Ride. I just did an interview with Evan Dorkin recently, the indie comics legend who made Welcome to Eltingville and Milk and Cheese and a bunch of other awesome stuff. I was just on the podcast Struggle Session, too, which is a show I recommend anyone check out, where I talked about with them about the Disney animator strike of the 40s and how it was like the first big Hollywood strike, and it really led to pretty much all the Hollywood unions that exist now, and how Disney's practices have gotten really shitty again, and they should be helping people out more and not letting them die in their car in Anaheim because they make $11 an hour at Disneyland. So check that out, and you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Matt J, and also at Disney 80s 90s, where I tweet about stuff from the Disney company from the 80s and the 90s, including a lot of Disney afternoon stuff.
Thanks so much for joining us, Matt. As for us, we are supported by Patreon, of course. And if you go to our Patreon at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, if you sign up at the $5 level, you can get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free. And that same goes for Talking Simpsons. If you subscribe right now, you can hear the next episode about the G.I. Joe 2-parter, There's No Place Like Springfield, Part 1 and 2. We also have so many exclusive series, so many exclusive interviews, so much stuff that will only live on the Patreon, Henry. We are in September now. What are two of the most recent things people can listen to on the Patreon that's exclusive to the Patreon?
Well, you can hear the recorded version of our live show that we did to celebrate the summertime with Krusty the Camp Krusty. Also, you can listen to our interview with Dan McGrath, who is one of the Simpsons writers from seasons 4, 5, and 6, but also who had worked on Mission Hill, Saturday Night Live, King of the Hill, Gravity Falls, and we talked to him all about that stuff. He doesn't give many interviews, and he was super giving to us. So we give a listen to the full thing on patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
As for me, I'm one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. I have another podcast. Yes, I have many podcasts. The other one is video game related. It's called Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast. It's been going on since 2006. Go to retronauts.com and look for Retronauts in your podcast device. You'll find it. I suggest you look at a topic that interests you and download that episode. I think you'll like the podcast, and you might even subscribe to it and give me money on that end too. Henry, where can we find you?
HENEREYG on Twitter. Follow me there for updates on all the new stuff we do, both on What a Cartoon and Talking Simpsons.
Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week with the G.I. Joe episodes. There's No Place Like Springfield, Part 1 and 2. See you then.
Did you know the nations were the last civilization conquered by the Romans?
Gee, Honk, you sure know how to cut loose on the old B-Day.